LSU English. This is From the South, and I am Suni Gray. Ivan Duque has been sworn in as the new president of Colombia during an almost biblical thunderstorm at Bolivar Square in Bogota. Heads of states and dignitaries from across Latin America arrived in Bogota for the inauguration of Duque. President Sebastián Piñera of Chile, Mauricio Macri of Argentina, and Evo Morales of Bolivia were welcomed by a Colombian military honor guard. Duque was sworn in as he faces yet another round of speculation and scrutiny over his links to brutal paramilitary groups in the country. Large opposition protests took place from early Tuesday against the presidency of far-right Ivan Duque, who's backed by the disgraced former president Alvaro Uribe.
It is an honor to govern Colombia. Our government will keep constant dialogue with the regions. We will listen to the necessities of the citizens. We do not pretend to come up with magical solutions. Some will take time, but we will start doing it. I have no enemies. My only wish is to govern all Colombians.
As Ivan Duque takes up the office of president, hundreds of FARC supporters demonstrated against him in the Colombian capital, Bogota. The protesters say they fear that democracy is at risk under the new president. They also believe Duque, who succeeded Juan Manuel Santos, would undo the peace deal reached with the FARC, which ended decades of conflict in the country. Duque's firebrand rhetoric has increased tension and rocked already fragile relations with the group.
The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, will head the U.S. delegation at President-elect Ivan Duque's inauguration ceremony. But in addition to attending this event, Haley will visit the Colombia-Venezuela border to see the situation of Venezuelan migrants that are arriving to Colombia daily, and also what is going on for Colombians regarding human rights. The ceremony for the change of government will take place this afternoon. In Simón Bolívar Square and in different cities across Colombia, the Colombia Humana movement is calling for protests to reject the killings of social leaders and to denounce the humanitarian crisis in some Colombian areas. Also, Colombian expats across the world have called for protests in different countries. While Ivan Duque swears in, Gustavo Petro, the opposition leader, will be giving a speech to denounce the humanitarian crisis in Colombia.
During President Juan Manuel Santos' 2 terms in office, a number of commitments were breached. The 2-term administration was met with strikes and protests from various sectors of Colombian society, but particularly by social movements and rural organizations which had hoped to see an agrarian reform in Colombia.
Santos is living without outlining campesino reservation areas. Without a program for substitution of crops, he is only succeed in taking away the FARC's weapons.
One of the main achievements of the government of Juan Manuel Santos was the signing of the peace accord reached with the FARC, a process which returned hope to millions of Colombians affected by the armed conflict.
There are opportunities to set up territories as ethnic communities within a territory, as campesino communities. Our view of the implementation is very positive.
But despite the efforts of the communities to implement the peace agreement, there were countless breaches.
A point of non-compliance with the processes of indigenous people, the processes of the black people in Colombia, and I would say with all processes by different social sectors.
Communities, primarily indigenous, campesino, and Afro-descendant, continue to suffer from state violence and from the effects of being abandoned by the government.
The war takes place in our territories, not in the Palace of Nariño. And so those breaches have caused the conflict to deepen internally in our territories, at very high costs, resulting in displacement and cost to the lives of our people.
Santos leaves without fulfilling commitments with former combatants of the FARC, and without developing commitments following the large-scale agrarian strikes. The civic strikes in Chocó and in Buenaventura of 2017, or the teachers' strikes.
This
outgoing government has been neglectful, failing Colombia's teachers. We didn't bet on the government so that they could be re-elected for the peace agreement, nor for its economic model. We didn't want the referendum. This government had the ability to increase the gross domestic product by 7.5%, and absolutely nothing happened.
And although Juan Manuel Santos won the Nobel Peace Prize, the reality is that violence and systematic murder continue throughout Colombia's territories. And after 8 years, during which he continued neoliberal policies, fundamental rights such as education, housing, and health continue to be violated, making Colombia the third most unequal country in the world.
And scores of Colombians living in London have protested to denounce the recent killings of social leaders in the country. The protest was organized by the International Agenda for Peace. Demonstrators said the state of Colombia has an obligation to protect social leaders, which would resolve the humanitarian crisis. They also demanded that the murders be stopped. People in the protest held photographs of murdered social leaders.
With Duque as the president, we have Uribe governing in another body. With Duque in the presidency, we have a long war ahead, because he's defending the interests of foreign forces, of the national elites, promoting corruption and the policies of Uribe.
The state has systematically declined to offer security to farmers, social leaders, women that represent their communities, fishermen and campesinos. The crisis is huge, and we can say that the defenders of human rights and social leaders are all by themselves and they are being killed. This government that takes position today in Colombia has the responsibility to complete the peace process and save Colombia from an indefinite war and stop taking Colombia into chaos, violence and humanitarian crisis.
Venezuelan authorities announced that the persons responsible for the assassination attempt against President Nicolas Maduro will be charged with state treason, attempted homicide, and financing terrorism.
The emblematic Bolivar Avenue in Caracas seems different from the usual buzz. The memory of the assassination attempt that occurred days ago is still fresh.
On Saturday, I was celebrating the National Constituent Assembly anniversary, celebrating the first year after the riots and violence when the assassination attempt happened.
The 81st anniversary of the Bolivarian National Guard was broadcast on national television, when according to preliminary investigations, 2 drones model M600, each one with a kilogram of C4 explosives, tried to approach President Nicolás Maduro and detonate.
We feel helpless because it's not fair. Venezuela has always been a country of peace, love, and brotherhood. It is not fair that they want to attack our country.
One of the drones flew over the presidential stands, but the security operations team distorted its signal, taking it outside the perimeter, crashing and injuring 7 officials. The second drone lost control and exploded in this building of downtown Caracas.
I was at my apartment on the 7th floor when I saw one of the drones approaching. It seemed like it was out of control. When it was 3 meters away from my apartment, it blew, creating a column of smoke that reached the 8th floor.
Residents of the area witnessed 2 vehicles in a parking lot transporting the drones and activating them.
I saw the drone, and another person next to me also saw the drone, so we said to each other that there's no way that a gas tank will explode, because we have the gas installed by pipes, and no one has gas tanks here. It is forbidden.
The Venezuelan Ministry of the Interior immediately opened an investigation for the crimes of terrorism and the assassination attempt. Authorities said that those who plotted the attempt have already been identified. 6 people were detained.
It wasn't only an assassination attempt against the president, who was the main target. It should also be described as a massacre, because we were there, and there were also leaders of the public powers and the military high command. If the goal was for the drones with explosives to reach the stage, let's imagine what would have happened.
While the investigations are still underway, President Nicolás Maduro has the support of his people.
Puerto Rican independence leader Oscar Lopez Rivera has been detained at an airport in Panama and will be deported to Puerto Rico. Lopez Rivera was flying to Bolivia to participate in the international seminar America in dispute and was held at the Panamanian airport despite having a valid passport and having served his political sentence in a U.S. prison. The social movements have criticized his arbitrary detention and have demanded his immediate release. A court in Argentina has sentenced the former Vice President Amado Boudou to 5 years and 10 months in prison for bribery and conducting business incompatible with public office. Boudou, 55, also served as economy minister during the 2007-2015 administration of President Cristina Fernandez. The court also banned Boudou for life from elective office, fined him around $3,000 and ordered that he be immediately sent to a local jail. Now, he has denied any wrongdoing in court, saying that the accusations against him are politically motivated. Well, time now for a short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
No podrán con nuestro presidente, no podrán contra el pueblo, no podrán contra la revolución bolivariana, porque estamos despiertos, estamos con una conciencia cada día más abierta, más despierta, más contentos, ¿verdad?, por lo que estamos viviendo, y que bueno, pues nosotros condenamos rotundamente todo lo que pasó con nuestro presidente.
Welcome back. In Argentina, the National Federation of University Teachers has gone on strike all across the country. They want better wages and they want the government to increase the budget for education.
The government so far hasn't responded to the teachers' demands, so classes have been suspended. The Federation of University Education delivered a petition to the Ministry of Education explaining what they need.
It's a strike that begins today, but it will last all week if we don't get positive answers. We will continue because this is a serious situation we're living in.
It is totally justified. Teachers haven't had a wage increase since 2015.
More than 190,000 teachers from all around the country rejected the government's proposal for a 15% wage increase, which they say is way below the inflation rate, which is expected to be 30% in 2018.
There hasn't been a proposal by the government, and we believe it's because the proposal wouldn't be more than 15%, as they are doing in other places, putting a wage cap of 15%. That just means there's a loss of purchasing power.
Both professors and university students question the severe budget cut implemented for public education. Last week, 2 school staff members died, and the government isn't moving swiftly enough to investigate.
There is a degree of perversion to this government, and it's not just happening in education, but with all workers. It's not what the president says that there is a storm, but there is a plan to transfer income from the most vulnerable sectors to the richest.
The university teachers say that the adjustment to public education that is being carried out by the government of Mauricio Macri is serious. It does not only reduce wages, it also hurts student training. They anticipate that they will continue with the forceful measures until they achieve a salary increase based on their collective bargaining.
And that's not the only protest happening in Argentina today. Our correspondent Sabrina Roth is at another in the capital, Buenos Aires.
We are at the St. Cayetano protest, organized by different social and workers' organizations. Demonstrators are walking towards Plaza de Mayo to demand that President Mauricio Macri modify his economic policies and the austerity measures that they say have affected the most vulnerable sectors of society. Workers are also demanding that the government discuss 5 bills that were proposed during a previous march. One of the bills focuses on an emergency food plan for the popular neighborhoods. The most important slogan for the march is "Out International Monetary Fund," in reference to the $50 billion loan the government signed with the international organization.
The former Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff has thanked the brave gesture from 3 militants from social movements who've been on a hunger strike for 8 days to demand the freedom of Luiz Ignacio Lula da Silva and denounce the increase in extreme poverty in Brazil. To enter the Supreme Court in Brasilia to submit an application there, but were prevented from entering by security at the building. And the young people of the Lula Libre movement have started their national meeting. Their guidelines include the actions to demand the freedom of Lula da Silva and guarantee his right to be a candidate in the elections in October. A torture and sexual abuse case against a group of students during the last Uruguayan dictatorship remains open despite the clear evidence that exists against the people behind the crimes.
In April 1975, the Uruguayan army deployed an operation with the objective of destroying the Communist Party in the department of 33. Between the 12th and 15th of April, they detained 39 militants of the Union of Communist Youth. They tortured and sexually abused them. Most of them were between 13 and 18 years old. The case remains unresolved.
I was 13 years old. There were several soldiers and army officials. The operation was headed by Dr. Hugo Díaz Agrelo, who was also a military doctor. They took my clothes off. They measured my height and I was weighed. Then they created a medical record to analyze how much I could resist to their torture.
The students' hands were tied with a wire. They didn't have food or water. They received electric shocks and were burned with cigarettes. They hanged them and hit them with an iron bar. These torture procedures were ordered by one of the worst militants who later became president of the country, Gregorio Goyo Alvarez.
Los vecinos escuchaban todo.
The neighbors heard everything. They heard the children screaming. How did the soldiers justify the detention of 39 minors screaming in the midst of torture? They published a press release.
The dictatorship ran a media propaganda campaign to justify the detention of minors, saying they were young people who organized orgies.
That was a false statement, which psychologically destroyed those boys and girls, accusing them of having bad sexual behavior. They destroyed their lives. They were healthy children who gathered together to fight against the dictatorship.
Some of the victims were detained for almost 6 years. Some others stayed in minor detention centers, but almost everyone had to leave the 33 department.
We were abused, tortured, expelled from our schools and from our own hometown, separated from our families, morally destroyed in front of our society. They did it on behalf of freedom and democracy. The dictatorship violated all of our rights.
The case of the students is one of the most brutal episodes of dictatorship, marked by torture and the sexual abuse against minors. The case was opened in 2011. None of the defendants have been found guilty.
Grenada is cleaning up after a tropical wave caused massive floods and landslides across the island late July. 2 out of 6 parishes have been declared disaster zones. Cleaning up is continuing, but there has been a call for communities to assist the government where they can to clear debris, especially since access to resources needed for larger cleanup operations are scarce.
Of course, the machines will come out, and that's
That has shown us something in Grenada. We've utilized nearly all the backhoes. We cannot use the tracked wheel excavators in many areas, so people might say, why aren't you using them? No, they will damage our roads. But the excavator and the rubber wheels equipment, they are certainly insufficient in numbers to tackle all the slides.
And the fastest man in the world plans to become the fastest man in football. Usain Bolt has signed on to play with the Central Coast Mariners, an Australian football club. He starts training with them on August 18th for what the club says is an indefinite period. He is the current world record holder in both the 100 and 200 meter race, and now he's trying to break records in another sport.
Hi guys, Usain here. I just want to say thanks to everybody at the Central Coast Mariners for giving me this opportunity to play professional football in the A-League. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to prove that with hard work anything is possible. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm going to come here and do my best. Watch out, I'm on the way. Remember, I don't think limits.
It's official. Jean-Henri Sean has been sworn in as the new Prime Minister of Haiti. President Jovenel Moïse said the new PM was one of the few with the conviction to serve for the betterment of Haiti. Moïse revealed his choice on Monday following 2 days of intense negotiations with leaders of both houses of parliament. He replaces Jacques-Guy Lefontaine, who resigned after he was blamed for the poor rollout of fuel price hikes, which caused riots in the capital. And young cyclists in Cuba are reviving a cycle trend in an effort to overcome the country's public transport system challenges. Once a month, dozens of cyclists take a 20-kilometer ride through the capital of Havana as part of a project called Bicicletera, which started 2 years ago during the country's economic hardship between 1989 and late 1990s, during and after the collapse of the Soviet Union, known as the Special Period. The use of bicycles were encouraged by then President and revolutionary leader Fidel Castro. With that many Cubans associate bicyclists with poverty, and these young cyclists want to break that stigma.
Among people, there is a new culture, a new rebirth of the bicycle, especially in young people who have memories of children riding the bicycle at the time of the Special Period, and we are bringing it back.
The best thing is to ride a bicycle. You save time, space, and you are more free. You are with yourself. You enjoy the city a little more and all the things that happen around you. It is great.
We turn now to Mexico, where after the elections, consumer confidence has increased to historic levels, boosted by the victory of the progressive candidate, Andrés Manuel López Obrador.
5 weeks after Mexico's presidential elections and 4 months until Andrés Manuel López Obrador takes office, Mexicans are optimistic about the country's future.
I believe people trust him because he is a president for the people. He came from the people and we rule for the people.
Mexico will transform into a different country as long as new measures against corruption are enforced.
We, Mexicans, will be more prone to pay all taxes as long as we are sure that they are well used.
These opinions reflect the last report by the National Institute of Statistics, which says that the consumer's confidence reached historic levels in July. Representatives from different sectors also show their trust in the president-elect.
AMLO is a committed leader to a radical transformation for Mexico, a fourth transformation, a plan that needs the support of all Mexicans.
López Obrador ratified his commitment to eradicate corruption. He said that this and other misbehavior will be left in the past come December 1st.
There has been a lot of corruption, and it's eating away from the budget.
López Obrador's development plan from south to north is aimed at generating jobs that will allow Mexicans to work in their own country instead of migrating.
The relation is going to change. No one is going to threaten us with closing or militarizing borders and building walls.
At the same time, López Obrador promised that public work will be allocated based in qualifications over political interests. López Obrador will be officially named as Mexico president-elect this Wednesday.
A coalition led by the United States has admitted that airstrikes that they carried out on Syria's Raqqa during the campaign to liberate the city from Islamic State militants killed 77 civilians. The coalition said in a report that the 77 were killed in 5 air raids from June to October in 2017. It said the tragedies happened despite the necessary protective measures taken by the coalition. Now, some organizations had disclosed before the report that these airstrikes killed 24 children and 25 women, which have been denied by the coalition. And an earthquake that wreaked havoc on Indonesia's tourist island of Lombok, killing at least 100 and leaving thousands homeless, has now created a humanitarian crisis. People are in need of clean water, food, medicine, and shelter. Around 75% of the north has been without electricity since Sunday. The authorities say that some communities affected by the disaster have been hard to reach because of damaged bridges and roads. And earlier we spoke to a resident of Lombok who told us, in his own words, about the gravity of the situation.
Well, we've had no power, water. I mean, for the last 48 hours, I was living on potato crisps and biscuits, as I think a lot of other people also. In terms of, again, on Gili itself, it's a different situation on Lombok, being a larger island. But on Gili itself, since evacuate everyone from the island, start cleanup, there's not a real issue with that right now.
And we end with news that the Hollywood Council has voted to remove Donald Trump's star from the Hollywood Walk of Fame. This comes after it was destroyed last month by a man using a pickaxe. It had been installed on the famed sidewalk in 2007, but it has since been vandalized. The council voted that it should be removed. Members will now make an official recommendation to the City of Los Angeles and the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce in a bid to have it removed. And we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesiotv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesio English, I'm Sonia Gray. Thank you for watching.